Good Wednesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Browns training camp will get underway a little bit over a week out at the Greenbrier for the first week or so. Today, though, Deshaun Watson had his 7-on-7 high school passing camp out at Berea Mid-Park High School. Talked about his rehab process, getting his shoulder ready for training camp, as well as his connection with wide receiver Amari Cooper, who wants a new contract from the Browns.
Yeah, the connection's been awesome. Me and Amari have been, even with all the other guys, it's not like he's missed a beat. Amari's always been there. We know what he can do. He's shown that. He's shown that over the off season, and the brotherhood, the love, the communication, none of that stuff has missed a beat at all. Yeah, Amari's gonna be good, and as far as the other stuff, that's their business. I can't get into all that. He knows that, we love him and we want him back for sure.
Deshaun, I know you said, you're feeling good, but has there been any update in terms of the throwing regimen? Do you expect to be a full go when training camp opens next week?
I've just been, taking it one day at a time. Everything's been, set in stone as far as just me going out there competing. There haven't been any setbacks or anything that's holding me back from, going forward so far.
With that, let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report. He is also the co-host of the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast and the Barking Browns podcast. Casey, he didn't really answer what but you know what, you wouldn't expect him to. He continues to throw. They have a plan, and so far, no setbacks. That's good news.
Yeah, some of it speaks to, some of it's out of his hands, how they're going to handle him. So he can't really speak and say, yeah, because they might have built-in days off for him and stuff like that. But the Cooper stuff, to me, the reason that it's so important that they get Cooper under contract is Deshaun Watson is admittedly a slow starter. You need to get him as many comfortable pieces as you can, and he definitely has a rapport with Amari Cooper. So you need to get that security blanket under contract, because it's as slow as Watson started off every season, not even just in Cleveland, but even in Houston, those first couple games are usually a little slow. So you get him Amari Cooper and get that comfort, that security blanket in place for number 4.
Well, the other thing is it's a new offense. There's, they're going to be asking the wide receivers to do some different things.
Yeah. And luckily it's Amari Cooper we're talking about, not someone else who I would be super worried about them not being there day one with all these choice routes and different offensive schematics coming into place. Amari Cooper is a consummate professional. I have no doubt he'll be able to pick that stuff up. And he's been a two-way go player his entire career. A check with me at the line type guy. And that's basically what a choice route is your ability to read a defense, be on the same page as your quarterback. And Cooper is someone I feel comfortable with that with.
All right, so along those lines, so Amari Cooper, still haven't heard anything relative to a contract with him. This is from Mary Kay Cabot. Says the Browns should call the 49ers about Brandon Aiyuk. They probably will. Mary Kay goes on to say, trade between the Niners and the Browns isn't likely. Aiyuk is playing on his 5th-year option. He's making less money than Cooper. He's making about, I believe I saw it was $14.1 million. He wants a new deal and likely wants to be paid among the top receivers. He's 4 years younger than Cooper. He's 26 years old. Listen to this, too. 61 of his 75 receptions resulted in either a first down or a touchdown. That's 80% last year. It's by far tops in the league. For everybody that wants the Browns to try to trade for Aiyuk, I don't think a second and Cooper gets it done. It probably has to be a first. First time they've had the number 1 overall, their first round pick in 3 years. Doesn't mean Andrew Berry wouldn't do it, but I don't think a second round pick and a 30-plus-year-old wide receiver get it done.
Yeah, if that was the case, it would probably already have happened. I know they fielded offers during the draft, and there was rumors that Washington offered a first, and they turned that down. So if you take that in consideration, and the way that wide receiver contracts are escalating, the value of that position, I think they know what they have in Aiyuk, and they're going to try to get consummate. They want to get what they want back. They want to figure out the value, and more likely that's a first. And it might not even be it might not be Cooper. They might not be want a wide receiver in return. They might have another position in mind, some other area that they want to shore up. But they're going to get as much value as they possibly can for Aiyuk. But I do know this: Andrew Berry is 100% going to figure out to call. He kicks the tires on everything. Anytime that there's a player who's up for trades, the Browns' name's always in the discussion for a reason, because he contacts the other team and figures out, what's going on. That's how the Browns got Amari Cooper. There was all of a sudden there was a rumor that they were considering cutting Amari Cooper. 2 days later, Cooper's on the Browns. So Andrew Berry's going to be active in that, and they're going to try to see what all avenues are available. And for nothing else, there's going to be other teams inside the AFC North that might want his services.
Absolutely. The Steelers want him. They've made it pretty well known. The other thing with the Niners, Pearsall, their number one pick, first-round pick, is on the PUP list. So it was a surprise. So they're really not in any hurry to get rid of Brandon Aiyuk. All right, along those lines, we've looked at these ESPN.com rankings, position groups. They're voted on by executive coaches and scouts in the NFL today. Top 10 wide receivers. Justin Jefferson's 1, Tariq Hill 2, Jamar Chase 3, CeeDee Lamb 4, Devontae Adams 5, A.J. Brown 6, Amon-Ra St. Brown 7, Mike Evans 8, Stephon Diggs 9. Brandon Aiyuk of the Niners was 10th. NFL executive, more downfield production, huge jump in yards per catch, quietly almost 300 career yards, excels as a blocker, lower body ability as good as anyone, NFL personnel evaluator, premier route runner with open field juice. Honorable mention in this was Amari Cooper, NFC scout rather. His game has aged well, consummate professional, always a good route runner. So again, not much difference in how the league, at least in this, sampling of it, views between Amari Cooper and Brandon Aiyuk.
Yeah, Ayuk's in a little different position because they're in such a run-heavy offense. The Browns have been in that at times, but last year when Cooper was really racking up numbers, the Browns were really airing it out, going vertical with Flacco, and Cooper excelled in that. But Brandon Aiyuk is very intriguing. He's younger. He has a high football IQ. He's an excellent blocker, a great route runner, and he's just coming into his physical prime. So I do expect, even if it could even be the 49ers, they could end up working something out at the 11th hour. If they have another injury, say, Pearsall's on the PUP, or if something happens to Debo, they're not going to just move off Aiyuk just to do it. They have to see the opportunity and get the value in return. Whereas Cooper, I do agree with the NFC scout. His game has aged well, and it will continue to because of the way he goes about his job, because he's just a salesman of a route runner. He's exact. He's on time. He's someone you can set your watch by. And his game's not predicated on being explosive. It's just being exact, and that's not going to slow down anytime soon. So I expect him to stay in that tier, and he'll probably still be, no matter how good he does this year, he'll probably still be on the honorable mention this time next year.
All right, so the question is, would you do a number one in Cooper for Aiyuk, knowing that you're going to have to pay Aiyuk probably $30+ million a year for multiple years?
Yes, I would.
I knew you would.
A lot of it's faith that I have in AB that structure the contract, so it's not going to be such a detriment. To feel like this thing that just hangs around your neck and it's weighing you down, and you can't sign other people. They've proven they could do that at the highest level when they signed Watson. So I just see an opportunity to get a player in his prime, and throughout the duration of their prime, when they're just coming into their own. He's putting up those kind of numbers in a run-first offense. And it's system-based, and I know how the Browns, the way that we perceive the way the offense is going to be run, especially on the outside with the receivers and choice routes, and I think Aiyuk would thrive in that. So if I have the opportunity to get a player like that under contract, I do it.
Yeah, and again, it's a number one, and you've reset the clock on your number one by 4 years, and that allows he's only a year older than Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Judy's 25, I believe it is. He's 26. All right, now we'll talk a little bit about Cooper contract relative to this as well. So the Browns and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah have been in talks regarding a contract extension for some time now. Sides are struggling to see eye to eye on the dollar figure. The hope is as talks move in a positive direction before the start of the season. That's per a league source reported on by Brad Stainbrook from the Orange and Brown Report, and again, he always has really good information. So I think that is legit. Now, the thing I would say is the Owusu-Koramoah potential new contract and Cooper, there's a sequence to it that they likely want to get one done so it creates some money up front for the other.
Yeah, and you don't know if one's stalling the other right now.
Right.
So there's reason we're not hearing anything about Cooper is they might have all their eggs in the JOK basket trying to get that figured out first before they move on to Amari. But it's interesting to see what their value is of JOK, and just because of the position that he plays. But for me, he's a difference maker and a math changer. So you can't have enough weapons on defense, and you've invested enough in this defensive line. You finally got to see last season what JOK could be in Jim Schwartz's defense. I just think there's a continuation of that's about to take place, and the sooner you get him signed, the better, because I think he's going to put even more on tape this year that are going to leave people saying that this kid should be an all-pro.
Yeah, I agree, but I also could see think about the Grant Delpit extension. Mm-hmm. You know, we saw some great stuff late in the year with JOK. It didn't start well. Before you commit top dollar for a linebacker, you know, that's $13 to $15 million a year for multiple years. You probably want to make sure it's real and it's going to happen again.
Yeah, that's fair, and you've seen them do that with, like you said, Grant Delpit's a good thing to point to, and the way they handled that contract. And if you look at the timeline, and you look at the timing of their bye week, I think that might be something to keep an eye on. If something doesn't get done before camp, they might put the pause on it, see how the beginning of the season unfolds, and then move accordingly. But I just see the JOK stock going nothing but up.
Yeah, I'm with you. You know, he could go out and get 20 tackles for a loss again, and then, you know, hey, I kind of want to be paid like an edge rusher.
Yeah, and he has a very different skill set than most inside linebackers, you know. He can do things off ball that most people can't. Those 20 tackles for loss, that is an edge rusher number.
Yeah.
When you look at the metrics, there's no other linebackers in that stratosphere. So if he can be a difference maker like that, he might be able to command more money. And part of it, you know, is part of the guardrails too. Identify and pay early, just to get ahead of the market. You've seen them do it with several key positions. And when they do it, they get criticized the day they sign the contract. But then within 3-4 months, when the market passes that contract up, they look pretty smart. So I think if you can, you try to do the same thing with JOK.
Yeah, absolutely. It's already the Jerry Jeudy is, now it's an A- on the trade when it was a C when they made it. So yeah, go figure.
Exactly.
Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, as well as the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast, and I can step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Can you believe this new $1,000 tax-free scratch-off? $18,000, $1,000 winners? Another winner? Good thing I brought my check-writing pens. You know what else is winning? My carpal tunnel syndrome. Wouldn't it be great for these guys if they could cash their tickets in online?
They can, with the Ohio Lottery app.
What? That's great! Wait, what's an app?
Attention shoppers, the Ohio Lottery's $1,000 tax-free $20 scratch-off is your best chance ever to win $1,000. And yes, you can cash it in online.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, Dave. My question is, what's going on with the Browns here? It's like been a couple of polls where the Browns was ranked 3 and 6, and now we have Amari Cooper, our most effective receiver, that's not signed yet. And it gives me pause because I'm just strongly believing every time we almost at the top, then new offense and new this, and I know the window is small. I appreciate you taking my call.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Casey, technically, Amari's under contract for $20 million for the upcoming season. But, again, I get it. I think the window is if Deshaun Watson plays the way I think you and I think he is, there's a 3-4 year window, maybe even more.
Yeah, that's exactly where my brain goes. 3 to 4 years just based on the age of the nucleus of the team. I think if you can keep that in place. Now, there's certain elements that might age out, but you've seen how the Browns have kind of drafted ahead. So if you just look at the interior offensive line, which is one of the among the very best in football, with Batonio, Potrich, Teller, this could possibly be the last year of that trio. One could retire, they could move on from one, but they've drafted Zach Zenter. They got Luke Whippler. They've kind of like got ahead of it. So that's how you keep your window open, is getting ahead of things. And the Browns, you've seen them repeatedly do this in the draft, where they're drafting a year ahead of time. That's how you extend the winning window. But it does all come down to the quarterback and the level of play they're able to reach. And if Deshaun Watson can be a top 12 to 8 quarterback, this window is at least 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, this is kind of interesting. So largest differences in ESPN's Open Score, which measures separation, and PFF's yards per route run in 2023 by Ian Harwitz. So Rondell Moore, 47th in Open Score, 99 yards per route run. That's the biggest difference. KJ Osborne, Garrett Wilson, Rashad Bateman, Elijah Moore's 5th, 31st, and then 74th, and Wan'Dale Robinson, 25th and 65th. You look at all those, and those are all receivers who had quarterbacks who were injured. Kyler Murray missed time. Kirk Cousins missed time. Garrett Wilson of the Jets. So, he was playing with a number of guys that struggled. Bateman, the only one that didn't is Rashad Bateman with Lamar Jackson. Elijah Moore had 4 different ones, and Wan'Dale Robinson, had Tommy DeVito was starting games. So that is a function more of poor quarterback play than poor receiving play. It was pretty good receiving play, but the quarterback struggled.
Yeah, and I would love to revisit this in 1 year after Elijah Moore gets kind of a new role this year with the implementation of Jerry Jeudy coming into play. I think you're going to see him in the slot a lot more as a vertical threat in that area, and I think you're going to see Elijah Moore get to play outside more, where he's better suited. Now, I know because of his size, there's an inclination to want to push him inside. But when you look at what he does well, he separates on the outside and gets loose in the second and third levels. So I don't expect him to see the volume that he saw last year, but I expect his efficiency to go up. I think he's a player who could easily catch 50 footballs for about 850 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns. So the volume might not be as high, but I do think those metrics will improve just based on his usage.
All right, so you wrote an article for the Orange and Brown Report, 3 areas the defense must improve on to separate themselves from the rest of the NFL. We'll run through all 3 of them here together. Cut down on the penalties is number 1. Number 2, stay stingy in the red zone. And number 3, in-game adjustments. And if we start with that, Jim Schwartz kind of alluded to it, his baseball analogy, the changeup. Not always the fastball.
Yeah, and with that being said, that fastball is going to get a lot of teams out. A lot of teams are not going to be able to handle that fastball. But where did we see the Browns get in trouble last year? When they faced veteran quarterbacks and innovative offensive coordinators who were more than happy to use Schwartz's aggressiveness against him. So you have to come up with wrinkles and pivot points built into your scheme to avoid those scenarios. And they can come from many different areas. You can disguise coverages, formation variation, or you can just blatantly break your own tendencies, which is the most counterintuitive thing for Schwartz to do, is take his foot off the gas. But there's going to be some instances where that might be what's called for. And to be more passive in zone approaches as opposed to always being aggressive, green dog blitzes, things like that. The teams were really exploiting the Browns on, just horizontally and kind of stretching everything out to take advantage of the gaps in coverage. So I think that is an approach they have to address. And it's not going to be every game. There's going to be some games where, really getting after quarterbacks and playing sticky man, that's going to be more than enough to take teams out of it. But there's going to become a couple instances where teams are going to be ready for that, and you have to have a counter for the counter, and that's something they have to do in 2024.
I would agree that red zone, that's important. Their red zone defense actually, it's got to be even a little bit better.
Yeah, well, they gave up opposing offenses scored 71% of the time, scored touchdowns inside the red zone, which was dead last in the league. And just considering how awesome the Browns are between the 20s, for whatever reason, once teams got inside the red zone, they weren't able to keep that same energy up, and they became more porous. And I believe that if you're a tip of the spear defense, that I believe the Browns to be, you got to keep that mentality and be stingy inside the red zone. You got to force teams to 3. But this is also an area where the offense could do a great deal to help the defense out. You know, we know the Browns led the NFL in turnovers with 37, and 12 of those opposing offenses were scored touchdowns on. But 5 of those occurred inside the red zone, and those are really hard, quick change scenarios for a defense to be in. You know, you did your job, you got your offense the ball, they turn it over inside the 20, and you're right back on the field. You know, but I do believe this Browns defense is talented enough that they can force teams to 3. Now, if you look at the number 1 team in the league, they usually hover just under 40%. If the Browns can get close to that, just given what they do between the 20s, if they can hold teams to 45% success inside the red zone, I would consider that a success.
Yeah, and the other thing is the turnover battle. The defense turned it over, or created turnovers. The offense has got to stop turning the ball over. Yeah. We've looked at this a couple of times. I think it was the Patriots and the Commanders and the Panthers were the only teams that turned the ball over more than the Browns last 2 years. And that's, I think it's either 68 or 70% of the time, if you win the turnover battle, you win the NFL game.
Yeah, it's the biggest indicator of wins and losses, that in time of possession. So the Browns are good on time of possession and terrible in turnovers last year. They need to figure that out. And I do believe that you'll see a drastic cut down on that, just given the change in offense and philosophy. And the fact that the quarterback that's back there doesn't have a history of turning the ball over at an alarming rate. And I know the end of the year was very exciting with Flacco, but we have to admit that it's tough to sustain winning when you're turning the ball over at that kind of clip.
Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report and I are going to step aside to take one more time. On the other side of the break, we'll hear more from Deshaun Watson. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, as well as the Barking Browns podcast. So earlier we talked a little bit about Deshaun Watson Foundation hosting the high school 7-on-7 competition. Division IV state champions Glenville, one of the teams competing in that 7-on-7. They had a special gift for the host. They presented Deshaun Watson with a Glenville State Championship football ring. And Casey, he kind of joked, I think he was joking, that he was going to give all of them Super Bowl rings when they won it this year. But again, he does a lot with not only the 7-on-7, he does some flag footballs. He's getting really involved, particularly with young football players. You know what? That's great to see.
Yeah, and he did that while he was in Houston as well. He was very involved in the community. And the further he gets away from his transgressions off the field and just keeps involving himself in the community in this way and surround himself with football, it's just only going to uplift him and uplift the community around him and the feeling that he generates of positivity when he talks to these young men. And I just wonder if he ran that by Jimmy and D first, that he was going to supply Super Bowl rings for an entire team.
You know what? If they win a Super Bowl, I don't think Jimmy and D aren't going to care. I really don't. I don't think they care. All right. Watson also talked a little bit more seriously here. Talked about his journey and working his way back from the shoulder injury.
Beautiful. It's been a blessing being able to sit back and recollect everything that's been going on, and just to be able to start from scratch, trying to build that foundation. So I don't get frustrated with anything like that. There's other things in life that can frustrate you and things like that. This is a blessing to continue to play the game of football, and to have the people that want you to succeed and have the people to work on you. So for me to even be back throwing the football is definitely my top point that I've been locked in with. So again, thinking Dr. Elatrosh, thanking the Browns medical staff, thanking Dr. Rob, Quincy, Billy, my whole team, everyone that's been around me that's been right there from day one. So it's been beautiful. It's been awesome.
And Casey, he just seems a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more at ease with everything.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's human nature. The easiest way to appreciate something is to have it taken from you. So that injury, having football taken from him yet again, and have him sit on the sidelines and just be an observer. He sounds very appreciative of the fact that he's back and he's getting acclimated to this new offense, to the scheme. His shoulders coming back into place. I think that it's he's in a good place mentally right now. Hopefully, he can keep that up after the bullets start flying, and he's not able to take any more injuries because mentally that has to wear on you. He's had football just in little spurts here and there. He needs to give it for the breadth of a full season. And the only way he's going to do that is to stay healthy.
All right, this is Colin Cowherd's top 10 head coaches in the NFL. Andy Reid 1, Sean McVay 2, John Harbaugh 3. Sean Payton, living on those New Orleans Saints Drew Brees days, is 4th. Mike Tomlin's 5th. Kyle Shanahan 6th. Matt LaFleur 7th. Stefanski is 8th. McDermott 9th. And DeMeco Ryans 10th. I can't. Stefanski in the top 10 is very fair. I would say Matt LaFleur and DeMeco Ryans. Let's hold off on those yellow jackets for the Hall of Fame just right now.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You want to put people up in tears before they're ready. They show a little bit of promise, and I got to give LaFleur his props. Because you didn't know if he was being propped up by Aaron Rodgers. Then Aaron Rodgers leaves, and he was able to cultivate a tremendous season for Jordan Love. And but that also happened to Jordan Love. Now Jordan Love's, and he's like next up. But we've only seen it for a small sample size, so I'd pump the brakes. And you're right about Sean Payton. I don't know how they have him sitting that high on any list, given what I've witnessed over the last year and a half. Just the way he goes, the way he talks about his business, the way he airs laundry. It doesn't feel like he's a coach with a ton of control. I can't be mad. Stefanski being viewed as a top 10 coach, that feels right to me. If you had him outside the top 10, I would feel like it was a little bit of a slight.
Yep.
But that's just where we're at now. We expect people to respect the coach who's won 2 defensive player of the years, 2 offensive head coach of the years. He's also, just what he was able to do and stabilize the ship last year, giving everything that went wrong. It was very tumultuous, and he was able to guide them across the finish line, and he's starting to get credit for that, which I think's due.
All right, so you think he's getting credit for that? Wait till we go through this one. This is the NFL Power Rankings ahead of training camp from Roto Baller. 49ers 1, Ravens 2, Chiefs 3. They have the Bears at 23, the Raiders at 24, the Titans at 25, the Saints at 26, and the Browns at 27, ahead of the Cardinals, Patriots, Commanders, and Broncos. I think we should take the crayons away from the folks at Roto Baller and make them sit in the corner, because that's not good. There's
Roto Baller.
Yeah.
You've made the list.
Yeah.
You've made the list now.
Yeah.
The lack of objectivity is insane to me. 27th, for real. That's how we're doing it. Well, this is just the Watson tax. This is also proof that public beatings never go out of style. And as long as it's popular to trash the Browns for the Watson thing, that's all this is. Because you cannot objectively look at this roster and tell me that it is not a top 10 roster, even with the quarterback. You can't convince me of that. I don't just watch the Browns. I watch every team in the league. I look at every roster. I study everything. The amount of holes that exist on other teams that we consider our second and third depth players to be issues sometimes. There are teams who can't field legitimate starters. They're putting depth out there as starters. The Browns are not doing that. This is a legitimate roster, and if you have them outside of your top 10, I take issue with that.
So this is their rationale. Does not look like Deshaun Watson will ever return to the level he was at Houston, and losing the top running back in the NFL doesn't help. The defense is outstanding, but the offense will be unable to move the football. They obviously haven't seen Nick Chubb squatting 540 pounds. And Deshaun Watson was still 8-4 in the games he started. I don't think the Panthers have won 8 games the last couple of years. Matter of fact, I know they haven't.
No, they have not. There's a lack of objectivity, and bet against Nick Chubb at your own peril. You can do that if you want. And he might not start off the season. We'll see how it works out. But, you can't tell me that man's not doing every single thing that he can to get back on the field and be Nick Chubb again. And, to your point, Watson's 8-4 in his 12 starts. The bottom line is winning. That's
right.
The bottom line, yes, he hasn't looked elite, because if he looks elite, that number's probably 16-2. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I don't know. I just laugh when I see lists like that. 27 is laughable to me.
Yeah, he plays elite. They have a chance to win 13 games this year with the schedule that they have. And it's one of the toughest schedules in football. If Deshaun Watson is elite, they have the ability to have the best record in football. They just do.
That's a fun sentence to say too, right?
Yeah.
But it's among the range of outcomes because of the team they've cultivated, because of the way this roster is constructed, because of the elite talent you have at so many different positions, and the key positions as well. If you just look across the board, if he plays top 8, all bets are off. You're playing for the number 1 seed.
Yeah, I'm with you. Casey Kinnamon, is always great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Anytime, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out. Orange and Brown Report. He is also the co-host of the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast and the Barking Browns podcast. Jacob Roach from Browns Wire. Straight ahead, we continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Can you believe this new $1,000 tax-free scratch-off? $18,000, $1,000 winners? Another winner? Good thing I brought my check writing pens. You know what else is winning? My carpal tunnel syndrome. Wouldn't it be great for these guys if they could cash their tickets in online?
They can, with the Ohio Lottery app.
What? That's great! Wait, what's an app?
Attention shoppers, the Ohio Lottery's $1,000 tax-free $20 scratch-off is your best chance ever to win $1,000. And yes, you can cash it in online.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. I was thinking about a hypothetical trade involving Cooper and Brandon Aiyuk. Even though I really like Cooper and what he stands for, his abilities on the field, and his very low maintenance personality, I would still execute that trade. Browns would have their wide receiver core for at least the next 3 to 4 years. But my question is, what would it cost the Browns to acquire Aiyuk? I know it will cost Cooper, but what kind of draft compensation would have to be added? And what kind of contract would Aiyuk demand from the Browns? How would he fit into this offense? Thanks. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Let's welcome in Jacob Roach from BrownsWire.com and the Barking Browns podcast. So, Jacob, I would guess, I said this earlier, I think it probably costs you Cooper in a number one, and then you probably got to give him something north of $30 million a year for probably 4 years. And I still might do it.
Right, that's the funny part, because a lot of times when you get into the hypothetical trade scenarios like this, you're like, after all of that, I don't know if I want to do that. But man, Brandon Aiyuk is that good. I'm with you on, Cooper. I think the starting point's definitely a second round pick. I think that's the minimum that has to go with Amari Cooper. And I agree with you. I'm kind of tending to lean towards it needing to be a day one pick. One thing that could happen with the Aiyuk trade, there could end up being kind of like a betting war. I mean, they've talked about the Commanders and the Steelers and things like that are other guys that are kind of interested and probably could make room for Aiyuk. And if that happens, if you're throwing in Cooper and a 1 and something else, I might be out on that because that's kind of getting a little rich. But at the same time, like, he's 26. He is as good of a route runner as Amari Cooper. I know people want to talk about that sort of stuff, and I think he is very close to that. I think he's right up there. He fits into any offense. I just think that this is a dude that was like a borderline all-pro player in a run-first offense. And, I talked to Casey Kinnamon on the show a couple of nights ago, and we kind of pointed out, like, he wasn't there when he first came into the league. It took Aiyuk a little bit of time to get going, but he's kind of worked his way there where he is a top-of-flight, top 5 wide receiver. And anytime you're going to try to get a top 5 player at a position, it's going to cost you a lot, but it's going to be worth it. You talk about that contract. I do not see it being anywhere south of $30 million a year. I mean, Jefferson got 35 and 30. I think A.J. Brown had 32. That's probably the starting point, is somewhere around that 32 million, 35 range. Aiyuk's up there with those guys in talent, so that's definitely what he's going to demand on the market. But again, though I might be wary if it takes more than Cooper in a first round pick, at the same time, Aiyuk on this team for the next 4, 5, 6 years, oh my goodness, it might be worth it all.
So the stat that we had when we were talking about this earlier, 61 of his 75 receptions last year, it's 80%, went for either a first down or a touchdown. That's by far the best in the NFL. All right, this is from Fansided, ranking every QB head coach duo. Number 1, they have Chiefs with Mahomes and Reed. Number 2, Ravens with Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh. Rams are 3rd with Stafford and McVay. They go Texans 12th, C.J. Stroud, D'Amico Ryans. Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson are 13th. They have the Browns with Deshaun Watson and Kevin Stefanski 14th, ahead of the Dolphins. Stefanski is already a 2-time Coach of the Year. His efforts making the Browns relevant, even with bad quarterback situations. I get that Watson has not played well. If he plays well, C.J. Stroud was great. He and D'Amico Ryans were first year. Let's see if the league can adjust to him. But to their point, the biggest thing with Watson is he has to be on the field.
Yeah, and I think that's why I'm somewhat okay with that ranking, just because, if you're putting him somewhere in the bottom half, like if they were in the 20s or anything like that, I would have a lot of issues with that. But, like, I think that if you're sitting here and you're going, hey, hasn't been on the field enough, go out there and show me a little bit more consistency, stay a little bit more healthy, and we'll bump you up into the top 10. I can live with that. But I find it very interesting that Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson are ahead of them, just solely from the standpoint that you had a monster mental collapse last year. And there were some people this offseason like calling for Doug Peterson to potentially be fired, and that Trevor Lawrence has not lived up to the hype, and he gets this massive contract. So I kind of think that I don't think I would have that duo ahead of them. But if you're solely putting this on, hey, there's not really, like, we think what we've seen so far we need more of, and it's not about projecting into the future that you think he can't bounce back, because I think Watson can. I can live with that ranking, but I still think I'd put him in the top 10.
All right, Deshaun Watson at his 7-on-7 high school camp today. They had a passing camp out in Berea. Talked about seeing Nick Chubb attack his rehab, including the 500-plus pound squat that's gone viral.
Yeah, I mean, no one on our team ever doubted Chubb. So if you have any doubt in Chubb, then I think you're supporting the wrong organization. So, or anybody on this team. You know, this culture is where it needs to be, and it's going in the right direction. And I think not just me, but multiple guys, multiple coaches. And if you don't see that, then like I said, you supporting the wrong organization, and you know, we don't accept any negative energy.
You know, Jacob, it's kind of interesting. You keep hearing multiple guys talking about the culture, and that's a good thing. You know, we've had enough of the other things, so the good culture is we will accept that.
Yeah, now I will say that I blew out both of my knees watching that squatting video. So like I'm currently on the mend right now and not doing so well, but it's refreshing, Dave. Like I think that's the word to talk about with kind of talking about, you know, the culture change and things like this. And it's actually funny. I'm writing up a story about this quote from Watson for Browns Wire, and I just think we have waited so long for facts like these to be true and not be make believe, because we as fans and content creators around this team have been wanting something to happen for this organization for so long, but it's always kind of been false hope. You're like, maybe this 6th round pick can go out there, play wide receiver. And it's like, we're talking about 4th and 5th round picks from a year ago not making this roster. That's where the team is. That's where this roster is. That's where the culture is. And as a very big Nick Chubb fan, even I doubted him a little bit, and I'm a little bit upset about that because he goes out and he does that. And it's just, this team feels like a team, feels like a group of guys that want to be around each other, that they believe in what is being preached from Andrew Berry all the way down to Kevin Stefanski and the position coach, and that truly the tides have turned in Cleveland.
Jacob Roach from Browns Wire and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Jacob Roach from BrownsWire.com, as well as the Barking Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I noticed during the time Miles Garrett is double teamed and triple teamed, he was mic'd up once and he was saying that they wasn't going to call it. And I'm wondering, is it possible that they can have a camera on the sideline to show? Because they say that Miles dropped off. I don't think he really dropped off. They just might give him a call.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Jacob, I'm sure the Browns point out several plays every week where he gets held, and it doesn't get called. It is what it is. I think he got banged up and has been banged up late in the year, so I think the double teams are, obviously if he's playing with one arm, the double team's more effective than if he's fully there.
Yeah, it seems like towards the back end of the season for the last couple of years, something has happened. You had the COVID season in which he really wasn't himself when he came back from COVID. You had the car accident. He had a groin injury one year against the Raiders. You could really see he was not himself. And yeah, if you're playing with one arm, double teams kind of turn into triple teams almost, because you're at half, you're at half power, so to speak. And then you got two guys that are able to use both of their arms, and you're going one arm against four. So yeah, I mean, I think that can be the biggest thing I want to see is the health thing, just where he's still able to go out there and wreck games. I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying, that he's terrible at the back end of the year, but I just don't think he's quite as effective. I mean, he ends up with the sack. He was on pace to potentially be a 20 sack guy last year, and it kind of fell off. Yeah, the pressures are there, the wins are there. The health thing, what really sucks about that is it is true, but there's just nothing you can do about it at this point. Like, I mean, they probably send in those tapes every week, like you said, and they get some apologies here and there. And there's that one game where they literally clotheslined him and no one seemed to care. And every once in a while, I think they feel a little pity for us every once in a while. So they throw one. There you go. There's one for you, I guess. But if he can stay healthy and not have these little nagging injuries, I don't see any reason why he can't go for 20 sacks this year.
All right. This is from CBSSports.com. 50 under-the-radar players that could shape the 2024 NFL season. A couple of Browns on this list. So they go Jerome Ford. With Chubb rehabbing from a major knee injury, Ford should once again play a significant role, at least early on, after being thrust into the spotlight as a rookie. Nice movements. 27.5 of his rushes went for 0 or negative yards, highest rate in the league. Ford and Cleveland will hope for more down-to-down consistency this season. And then they also say Martin Emerson. Last 2 years, Emerson has allowed just 45.8% of the passes thrown his direction to be completed. It's the best mark in the NFL. His 50.8 passer rating allowed as the primary defender over that span is 14th. It's ahead of Deshaun Ward and Sauce Gardner and other top corners. Let's start with Emerson. Every time I see him play, it's like, man, this guy's really good. And if he gets a couple of turnovers, makes a couple of splash plays, I think he immediately becomes kind of Pro Bowler. I think he's going to be anyway. I think he's got that type of skill set. Just a splash two or play on national TV away from entering everybody's consciousness.
Yeah, I think that we talked about this when he was coming out of college, and I think it's happened to him again here in the NFL, where not really anybody knew much about Martin Emerson in that class. There wasn't a ton of buzz. The Browns take him in the third round, which is kind of where he was projected, but still a lot of fans and media members were kind of like, I don't know about this. And it was simply because he didn't have those big, flashy, splashy plays that you're talking about, where like he's not, picking off 7 passes and taking it back to the house because they're not throwing at him. Like that's what happened to him at Mississippi State was they would not throw to that side. They would go to the other side. And so you didn't really know his name because he didn't get a lot of those opportunities. And then I think in this situation, he's not making a ton of interceptions and they are at times not going his way. So yeah, the national media doesn't see it, but he let up 0 touchdowns. And it's like we talk about the Cleveland Browns effect when it comes to rankings in this. I think that happens with Emerson, but I think what really hurts Emerson is that he plays with 2 other really, really good corners. So like at times they don't go his way, especially if somebody's hurt and there's like a backup on the field, they'll try to target that kind of thing. They're like, I'm not going to risk throwing at Emerson's side. But, you talk about Greg Newsome, you talk about Denzel Ward, and then everybody's like, well, we don't want to talk about the third corner in Cleveland. It's quite frankly, I think he's the number 1 corner in Cleveland, but that's just me. That's a conversation for a different day. But if he could be a little bit more flashy, I think that would help. But in the end, I'll let him fly under the radar and allow no touchdowns. So I'm okay with it. But yeah, I think you're right 100%. If he had a pick 6 against the Cowboys in pseudo prime time with Tom Brady watching this year, I think he'd get a little bit of respect.
So the other one is Jerome Ford. The thing about Ford, and I agree, I've been critical of him, the 27.5 rushes for 0 or negative yards. You got to remember, a lot of those were with the the 4th and 5th tackles. So anytime you're getting a guy, to what will typically happen is there's a defender in the backfield that immediately you have to make miss. And for a younger back, it's a little more difficult to do.
You got to remember, he didn't even have 10 touches his rookie year. So like he did not play a ton until he was thrust into week 2 as the starter for the rest of the year. And I think there was a little bit of a learning curve for him early in some of those situations, because I think he got much better as the year went on and he got more touches and got more experience. But as he got more touches and got more experience, you were suddenly on your 4th and 5th tackles. And it was like, for a guy that's not like, he is a very good athlete, but he's not like a freaky level athlete. And so for a guy that's kind of middle of the road when it comes to that, that's not his game. Making people miss right out the gate in the backfield, that's not really what he's at. He's more of a north and south, get downhill, has some good high end speed, and can run away for some big gains. But, dancing around and breaking ankles, that's not really his game. And he was put in that spot a lot, like you said. And so I think the boomer bust rate is definitely why he didn't get more respect. But something that I come back to with him that I really like to hang my hat on thinking about what he could do this year is I love what he does when the play breaks down in the pass game and the way he works back to the quarterback as a wide receiver. I come back to the Joe Flacco gets smacked in the face and finds Jerome Ford, and that's because he never gives up on a play, and he was working his way back to the quarterback and giving a viable option. So I really think that what we saw towards the tail end of the year was a more all-around back and more what you'll see from Jerome Ford going forward.
So I know you have previewed the Browns safety group on the Barking Browns podcast. What do you think of it? Take us through the safety group.
It's kind of interesting because the more I talked about the safety group last night, the more I kind of liked it as I was going through there. And I think that I've talked with Lance Reisland about, he's put it out on Twitter, and we talked to him last night about Juan Thornhill and specifically the limitations he had because of the injury last year. And I think he battled back, and I think he was better than some people wanted to give him credit for. But, his ability to be a true free safety, a center fielder, to come crashing down in the run game and to be kind of a safety blanket over the top and preventing some of these big plays, he couldn't run at top speed. And he couldn't, the kind of change of direction that he could do at a drop of a hat that made him really, really good in KC, he didn't have that last year. And so I think that this safety room from last year to this year is already significantly better if he can stay healthy. I mean, if he's out there and he's the guy he was in KC, there's a reason they paid him what they paid him. And there's a reason why people like me were so excited about Thornhill when he first got here. It just didn't really materialize last year. And then you talk about Grant Delpit, and you just talk about just missing out and feeling like you got the raw end of the deal. He was just starting to play some of the best football we've seen at the position in Cleveland in a while, and then he gets hurt after he signs that contract. We love to talk about JOK, and I love JOK. You should talk about Grant Delpit in the same breath and in the same way as here is an athlete that can do a lot of different things that can really be a game changer. I think Grant Delpit, a healthy Grant Delpit, can push for an all-pro. That's where I think he is. He's a Swiss Army knife. You put him in the slot, in the box as a linebacker. He can rush the passer. We've seen that. He can play deep safety if you really need him there. Heck, I think he could play outside corner if you were in a pinch and you really needed to put him out there. And you mix that in with a guy like Rodney McLeod behind him, he can do a little bit of the same things. He's a little older, not quite the athlete that Delpit is at this point in his career, but you've got a couple of players you can move all over the field. And we're not talking about, Ronnie Hickman and DeAnthony Bell are still there. And those are some guys that are going to really compete for some playing time and for roster spots. And so the more I break down and the more I think about the safety room, I think it's in the top half of the league. It could be a borderline top 10 group. And that's just insane.
Jacob Roach from BrownsWire.com, as well as the Barking Browns podcast. Now I'm going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break. Some potential training camp darlings for the Browns. Training camp gets underway Thursday, a week from tomorrow. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Can you believe this new $1,000 tax-free scratch-off? $18,000, $1,000 winners? Another winner? Good thing I brought my check writing pens. You know what else is winning? My carpal tunnel syndrome. Wouldn't it be great for these guys if they could cash their tickets in online?
They can, with the Ohio Lottery app.
What? That's great! Wait, what's an app?
Attention shoppers, the Ohio Lottery's $1,000 tax-free $20 scratch-off is your best chance ever to win $1,000. And yes, you can cash it in online.
We continue talking Browns with Jacob Roach from BrownsWire.com and the Barking Browns podcast. These are potential training camp darlings for the Browns from Yard Barker. They go offensive guard, Javion Cone. Cone, Browns' top undrafted free agent, signing a player that many believe would have been drafted. Cone, strong pass blocker in college, did not give up a sack till his senior year in Miami. Running back, Nyheim Hines. Hines, a veteran, well-known, perfect kind of player to stand out in training camp. Has been a tremendous pass catcher out of the backfield over the course of his career. Rookie wide receiver Jamari Thrash, with Amari Cooper possibly out some of training camp. There's an opportunity for more reps to be given out to the rest of the room. Thrash can win downfield and get open. He has a chance to carve out a depth role year one in Cleveland. Defensive tackle Michael Hall, young player stepping up and being a piece to build around in the middle of that defense, would be big for roster building. Strong training camp from Hall could make a player like Maurice Hurst expendable. I could see all of these guys standing out, Jacob, but I don't think Maurice Hurst is going to be a guy that's expendable. But I think Michael Hall, I think he could carve out a pass rushing niche for himself.
And I think with Nyheim Hines and Michael Hall, I think that's exactly what those two can do in training camp in the preseason, where Hines can be that gadgety kind of he's a good route runner, so he can be in the slot, but he's great as a kind of releasing from the backfield and running routes outside of there. And Kevin Stefanski's been looking for somebody that's really good at jet sweeps for a long time, and you've got that. And I think Hines will get a lot of play, a lot of run because of the injury and missing last year. So you want to try to bring him along before the season. You want him to get some, get into contact, get back into the flow of things before, football starts. And with Hall, that's exactly where I'm at. Might not be ready to play or start in the first, especially not as a run defender. And he's got to, I think, add a little bit of strength and work kind of on some of his leverage in run plays. But that dude, his athleticism, you should not be that good of an athlete at that size. And I think he's going to be able to go out there in situations in training camp where it's going to flash early and often because he's on a different level when it comes to athleticism at that size. Yeah, I'm not sure about Maurice Hurst being expendable just because I think he's shown you that in the NFL. But if he's on the bubble and Michael Hall does, kind of break out and dominate in camp, it could potentially make them consider it at least. I don't really want that to happen because I think, we've seen it at the NFL level with Hurst. And if you've got NFL production, I'd rather go that way. But even Jamari Thrash, I think, is an interesting one just because he was my favorite draft pick in this class because I think his body control and his ability to get in and out of his breaks is ridiculous. And he is going to get to learn from Jerry Jeudy and Amari Cooper, who are really great route runners. And I think he can take that to the next level, learning from those guys. And, even if Amari Cooper, people are talking about holdouts, maybe he misses some time. You still got to remember, Amari Cooper takes some time off in camp. I mean, the veteran rest days and things like that. There will be opportunities for these young wide receivers. And Jamari Thrash is definitely the guy that I think comes out of nowhere just because 5th round pick, he's a rookie. You expect jumps from Cedric Tillman and potentially Jerry Jeudy coming into this new organization. But I really like all of those guys in terms of camp darlings. But if I had to really just nominate one, I think it is Michael Hall.
Yeah, and again, Hall's just 21. He just turned 21, so he is a baby relative to his body. He is going to get bigger and stronger just because he's going to fill out, because he's going to become 23 and 24. But yeah, the quickness and the athleticism on the interior of the defensive line, good luck blocking that. All right, so training camp starts week from tomorrow. What do you want to see early in camp that will make you feel, I don't want to say better about 2020, make you feel like this team is going to do what we think they're going to do in 2024?
Any tight end not named David Njoku looking playable. I think the depth there scares me. There's some other areas, like some of the back end depth at linebacker specifically, and maybe some, I'm not sure how the interior offensive line depth is going to go, but, I like Jordan Akins. I think he has shown in the past that he can be a good number 2, but he's not much of a blocker. And after that, there's nobody on this roster. I mean, they didn't even bring in a draft pick. I mean, they got an undrafted free agent in Trayton Welch, and I think he's pretty good in terms of developmental players and that sort of thing, but they didn't bring in any real veterans or any other blocking tight ends outside of David Njoku. And just, that's where I'm a little terrified, a little worried. But if somebody can go out there, even if it's Zaire Mitchell-Payton, I mean, I've heard he's transformed his body, added some size, and looks ready to go. I just need one of those guys to be playable. They don't have to be starter level, but it's just somebody to kind of calm the nerves that if David needs a break or, heaven forbid, misses time, that somebody can at least be playable.
Jacob Roach, BrownsWire.com, as always. Great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jacob.
Thanks, guys.
Jacob Roach, make sure you check him out. Also, he is the co-host of the Barking Browns podcast and writes for BrownsWire.com. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.